On this morning's Health Watch, a strong warning for red meat eaters. A new study says that if you eat just a quarter pound of meat every day, it could give you a higher risk of dying from cancer and heart disease. Joining us now is early show contributor and WCBS medical reporter, Dr. Holly Phillips. Good morning, Holly.
Good morning, Maggie.
This is big news. This is not just that it increases the risk. This is that it will raise your chances of dying early.
Exactly, and that's what makes this study different. First of all, it was a huge study. It looked at 500,000 people, but also it linked red meat with death, not just illnesses, but illnesses that lead to death.
So it followed these older people for 10 years.
Exactly.
And it found that the people who ate the most red meat had a greater chance of dying within those 10 years. Specifically, they ate about this much red meat every day?
Every day. This is a quarter pounder, and this is about a quarter pound of sirloin as well. So people who ate this amount every day were at a dramatically increased risk of death as compared to people who ate only 5 ounces a week. Now, specifically, men were at an increased risk of death, 22% increased risk of death from cancer, 27% increased risk of death from heart disease. Women were at a 20% increased risk of death from cancer and a 50% increased risk of death from heart disease.
Boy, that number stands out,
it's
50%.
Huge. These numbers are really staggering.
Any way to explain why women have a 50% greater chance of dying from heart disease if they eat more red meat?
Sure. Well, red meat is high in saturated fat, which is really our top risk factor for heart disease. And I think in women, it also trickles down to how heart disease is, how they're treated for heart disease, a little less aggressively than men.
So the saturated fat, what is it about meat? What else is it about meat that makes it harmful?
Right. Well, saturated fat is one very, very big part. Some other studies have shown that the way we prepare it, if you flame broil it, it might create cancer-forming compounds. And the processed meats were no better than the fresher red meats.
And pork was no better because pork is usually touted as white meat, but it contains just as much iron as red meat.
Exactly. Well, the processed meats are also high in salt, which increases your risk factors for other things, particularly stroke, high blood pressure, etc.
We should also say this was done by the National Institutes of Health, not by anybody with any ulterior motive.
Not at all.
Even so, the American Meat Institute says it's not right because all the people did was fill out a questionnaire, which isn't necessarily reliable. That's what they say.
Well, although I will say so many people were studied in this that it makes the results a little bit more accurate. And frankly, the researchers are not suggesting we all become vegan or we all go to a vegetarian diet. They're simply saying we have to be very careful about the amount of red meat we have.
So in the last seconds, what would you tell your patients? How much red meat a day is okay?
Well, based on this study, only 5 ounces a week is okay. So if you wanted to spread it out over 7 days, that's okay, but it's just a sliver.
That's very little. That's about this right here. A week, that's all you should be having.
It's but there are other sources. Chicken, fish, eggs, other sources of protein, beans and nuts. We don't have to rely on the red meat for all of our nutrients.
All right, Dr. Holly Phillips, thank you.
Sure.